All right, welcome to GCP Online Meetup number 35. 35. We're going fast. I'm Jonathan Cham, I'm your host, and we have
Vivian Boykin, customer engineer here at Google.
All right, so today we are talking about Firestore. It was announced, October 3rd?
Yeah.
And it came out with a lot of fanfare. I think someone had tweeted it was had the most questions on Stack Overflow. So I think Vivian and I were like, all right, we need to get someone to answer some of these questions. So we have Dan here on the line. How you doing, Dan?
Excellent. How are you, Jonathan?
All right, thank you. You look great today, even though after you've had a child. So you still look alive and well rested.
I'm impressed. I don't have a child, and I don't look that well rested.
So, yeah, thank you for joining us. Can you introduce yourself real quick?
I guess I can. I'm Dan McGrath. I'm a product manager on the cloud team, taking care of things like Data Store and Cloud Firestore.
Great. Thanks, Dan. And let's see here. So, thank you everyone for jumping on real quick. This is a Firestore overview, so we're going to do some FAQ. I think first of all, I think most people have the question like, what is Firestore? Why Firestore? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Maybe I can give some quick background as well, just sort of tell the story a little bit. I know a lot of people may be aware of a company called Firebase that was acquired by Google a few years ago. And they had a couple of products, but one of the key products, sort of the flagship product, if you will, was a database called the Realtime database. And one of its goals was really to make development for mobile and web applications super easy by taking care of all that infrastructure that did real-time sync between devices for you. So that's something that's been continued to develop among Google, and it's done a great job. Lots of businesses happily using it. One of the things they looked at, though, is what do we do now? What are the big problems we need to solve that we've seen with the Firebase real-time database? And one of the two big issues that they really looked at were how you can query the data set, in that the real-time database had some fundamental queries you could do, but not much beyond that. And the other one was for really large scale. So for most application, it's perfectly fine, but what happens when you become one of these sort of global scale applications? And Firebase had a few quirks on how you would work around that, sort of manually sharding your data between different databases that moved away from that core premise of making everything super simple for you. And that's really where Cloud Firestore was born from. I was looking, okay, now that they're part of Google, all this infrastructure and the lessons they've learned from the product, how do we solve these large-scale query issues for people doing real-time sync on devices? And that's where Cloud Firestore came to be.
Great. So it sounds like, obviously with Firestore, you're looking to increase the scale, but also improve the type of queries that you can do. Basically, give it more features that are maybe for kind of expanded to larger set of users that might need that.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I think, let's take a look at what it's capable of. I know you have a little fun demo that you wanted to show.
Okay, I guess we can switch over to this one. For anyone who's a fan of corgis.
I know, I totally am.
Yeah, Vivian said she loves dogs, especially corgis. Are you sharing your screen, Dan?
Let me just pull that up. Sorry, I got distracted playing with the corgis myself.
Yeah, I was playing with that earlier. I'm moving them around.
Super excited to see this.
Yes. So maybe I'll describe for the viewer while you're getting that set up. Yep. So basically, it looks like you can there's dogs there, and you can move them around, and they're all synced with each other, right? So anybody who goes to the website can.
Hey there, buddy.
So I see that you are moving one of the corgis, and I'm kind of following along here. I want to say hi with a little woof. So tell us what's going on in the back end. How is this working?
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things about this is maybe just mention the products that it took to build this. A real-time app that syncs between you and I here, Vivian, many other people. You'll see other dogs on the other side that people aren't logged on at the moment. But this is really driven by Cloud Firestore in the back end, and then you can use Firebase hosting to serve the HTML and JavaScript content. And then Firebase Auth as well to make sure users can sign in and we can handle all that. So what's happening here is when we're moving our corgis around, we're sending updates to our positions that are getting synced between users to tell everyone where the various corgis are that are within range of being seen. And when we press spacebar, we can have it perform an action. In this case, it's the highly expressive language of Wolf. And then we sync that between them. Now, one of the things that makes this really special is the securities rule language. So normally when you do an interactive application like this, you have to write some compute layer that essentially proxies requests, doing mostly business logic around security. So making sure the data is valid, making sure the user can perform the action that they're trying to do, all that sort of sanitization stuff. And so we have a declarative rule language that allows you to do that without having to worry about deploying servers just to take care of that.
Fantastic. And this is a lot of fun too. And it sounds like it was relatively simple to create and get up and started relatively quickly. Is that the case?
Yeah, this was done by one of our great UX engineers on the team, responsible for other things like the Firebase logo. People on the team love corgis, so they put together this super quick demo, and it's really easy to do. And I'd say that as someone myself, I'm not very good at CSS. That probably would have taken the bulk of the time of this.
And you mentioned a little bit about authentication as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that, the authentication layer?
Yeah, with Firebase, there's a functionality or product called Firebase Authentication, Firebase Auth. And what it allows you to do is hook into either Google sign-in or third-party sign-ins like Facebook and Twitter. So you can verify, do the whole OAuth step to make sure the person is who they're claiming to be. Also allows you to hook into your own authentication systems, or you can do username like email and password, and whatever you want to do. And then we handle all the hard part of making sure that that full OAuth flow happens. And I can't really talk about authentication here without talking about security rules that I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. So just quickly flip over to just give you a look at what it can look like in the background. And essentially, it's a declarative language that allows you to look at parts of the database and enforce different rules. You can write some functions just to make your security rules a little more modular. But the idea here is you can look at the different types of actions on the database, like read and create, and you can check the data to make sure it contains certain values or has a certain schema, as well as doing what we mentioned before around checking the person who signed in and checking it against maybe properties you have in the database to control access.
And that's straightforward.
Yeah, this is me writing some stuff just to test out a multiplayer game where you can only see what the other player did once you've done a move yourself. So think of something like rock, paper, scissors. You can do that all in this declarative language.
Now, are there some demos online for people to get started quick and easily just to understand how it all works together in a cohesive flow?
Yeah. Let me just switch back out of screen.
Yeah, so Vivian, I think you had a question.
So are there some demos online to get people started quickly and easily to understand how it all works together?
Actually, there's been a lot of people posting stuff on Twitter, which has been great. Lots of people doing sort of a weekend project. I saw someone won some best use of Google Cloud at a serverless conference, I think literally a day or two after this was launched. But if you go to the Firebase documentation, we have a lot of like getting started guides in various language that should be able to get you up and running really quick.
Yeah, so I think we were kind of joking earlier about the architecture for this, right? And then we mentioned, well, it's just a box. Maybe for those of people who aren't really familiar with Firebase, Firestore, typically you have maybe some compute, some storage, and a database. How is that all kind of working within this framework that we call Firestore? Is it just all the APIs and the framework that you're programming against? It just does all of that stuff for you. It puts in compute, throws it into storage and puts it in database. Is it really that easy?
Yeah, and so maybe it's taking a little bit far when I'm joking about these complex architecture diagrams of here's how you build a game and let's just replace it with one box. but it really does simplify it. So if you're looking at an architecture diagram, maybe you have a couple of boxes, like your database stack is using Cloud Firestore and it does direct access to mobile clients. So all those front ends that you had to do, say you've got 100,000 concurrent users, which is quite a lot when you look at that'd be over 1 million daily active users. All that sort of fan out work is done by our system for you. So you don't need to worry about all these load balancing layers, web servers. When you combine that with hosting, if you're doing HTML pages like progressive web apps, that's super simple now. Same with auth, just to take care of that for you. Firebase has storage, which hooks into cloud storage. So if you've got assets like images that you want to serve, that's all actually built into the same SDK, which I think is really awesome, in that you can use Firestore, storage, auth, hosting, all within that same environment. One thing, sorry, go Vivian.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing I didn't mention before that can really help you flesh out more complex integrations or interactions is the integration with cloud functions. So you can think of this like triggers on the database. You can subscribe to events for reading, deleting, updating, inserting new items, and then call a cloud function with your little snippet of Node.js code. And so people are doing that with things like Slack integrations to push chat messages into Slack or send out a tweet, which is really cool.
And this sounds like a really robust toolkit. So what are the ideal applications?
And maybe what are not the ideal applications, right?
Yeah, that's really good. And I think that's really important, both what should you use it for and what shouldn't you use it for. Probably in the use it for, like I mentioned before, progressive web apps, this is an amazing toolkit to write for that. Obviously, a lot of the functionality we've done, some that I didn't mention, like offline mode, are really helpful for building mobile applications that maybe front an existing system or a brand new one you're doing. I think we just had a summit in Amsterdam where we had a couple of customers up on stage. As an example, HomeAway is a customer who did a demo there where they're using Cloud Firestore's offline mode for their local application. So when you're traveling and you don't have data connection available, you've already got stuff cached on the device, it continues to work even though you haven't got a network. You can queue up updates. On the side of things that you shouldn't use Cloud Firestore for, one thing I want to note right now, as of October 3rd, we're in beta, which means we don't have an official SLA on the product. So if you're looking at sort of mission critical systems at this point, I wouldn't go replace your entire existing stack with this right yet, just because we're beta and we don't have those GA guarantees on the system. The other one that's maybe obvious when you say it out loud, but if your system is really built around a fully fledged relational database and it's very service centric at this point, maybe like the back end of a banking system that's handling all the transaction ledgers, that's probably not the best fit for this because you're not really getting usage of the mobile-centric functionality we've got.
Yeah, I know that with Firestore, we've added some features around transactions or ASK transactions. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I bring up banking as an example, like the core infrastructure behind that's probably, you've got other systems you're already using. But it is worth noting that Firestore is a fully fledged database. It's not just syncing between applications. It does support full ACID transactions. So you can do multiple documents and we'll guarantee they're all committed at the same time and roll back if you don't complete the connection, or sorry, the transaction. That's really important. And one thing that's really cool about this as well, so we said part of the reason for this database is really giving a database system out there for people that makes things super simple, but also scales with your application. So under the covers, this is a distributed database. We go across not just multiple data centers, but data centers in distinct geo regions. And a lot of people have looked at distributed databases in the sort of NoSQL world and will know that things are traded off like strong consistency. And so you'll hear words in systems like eventual consistency. And the design behind this is actually strongly consistent all the time. So you don't have to worry about these weird edge cases that you have to think about with a lot of distributed systems.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of customers that I talk to are really gravitating towards fully managed, right? They don't want to deal with things like, spinning up infrastructure, updating, patching. I mean, these are all things that are accomplished with Firestore. You mentioned something that's very interesting, though, like the multi-regional. Firestore is multi-regional, right? So people don't have to deal with high availability because we deal with that on the back end. Is that right?
Yeah, and honestly, if you can have someone else take care of the infrastructure and you can take those same people and actually work on functionality that's really meaningful for your users, why wouldn't you take that offer up? It really is something that can be hard to set up, hard to maintain. I've worked with databases for a long time in many different environments, and replication, high availability, those sort of configurations, there's so many things you need to think about. Like, who wants to have to think about the network link between data centers versus what was the latest big feature request you've got from your customer base?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a customer. I mean, they had a team of 10 just doing securities, updates, patching. I mean, that's a lot of people just to do that, right? I mean, they could probably be better valued in creating new, business functions and adding new features to the application. So I think most people understand that fully managed is the place to go. I think the caveat, though, is I mean, you lose a little bit of control, right? Once you do fully managed, you don't get to tinker with the Linux kernel anymore. You don't get to, tweak. You just assume that the infrastructure is going to optimize the app to the best that they can for as many users as possible.
Yep.
So, yeah. I don't know, Vivian, I think you had a couple questions.
Yeah, I was curious because we were talking about, the different types of applications this is suited for. Now, what are the different frameworks that are supported?
That's I think that's one of my favorite things, just watching and sort of responding to people what they've been creating since we've launched. If you're creating web apps, there's been a couple of good plugins or additions to frameworks. So Angular Fire. So for Angular JS users, there's the Firestore plugin for that. But they completely redid the database layer to make it really intuitive to use. That was a great announcement that come out almost at the same time as the launch. React Native, there's a Firebase plugin for that supports Cloud Firestore now. Vue.js as well. If you're down that path, you can do a Vue.js and Firestore application. But one of the ones that definitely caught my eye, just because I've been a fan with Cardboard when I first joined Google and they sent around the Cardboard devices and got to show people that. There's a framework called A-Frame, which is a web framework for VR. And that also has support for Firestore now. So if you want live database updates being pushed out into a VR world, the community's already got you covered.
And I was going to say this is incredibly exciting, especially for our gaming customers then, because VR is kind of the next frontier. And so seeing that integrated support for VR development is so exciting. Do you see a lot coming from that either now or in the future?
Oh, I definitely hope so. I think when you're looking at trends where people are going, VR is definitely one of the top ones, super exciting what people are doing with that. But then just being able to do VR while not having to worry about the infrastructure to do this sort of thing is going to be, I think, really important when you're sort of breaking new grounds with these apps. You don't want to be bogged down in technical details that have nothing to do with that VR environment you're trying to create.
Right. So talking about VR and any type of entertainment-based application, can you store large binary objects in like videos or sound files or images in Firestore?
I'm a big proponent of telling people when not to do stuff. So this is something I would kindly request not to store video in Cloud Firestore. As I mentioned before, it's sort of that database environment. But there are tooling to do those large binary objects. So when you're thinking Firestore, think about sort of like JSON document style data within that 1 megabyte limit. Now, we do have this collections and document structure that can allow you to have sub-collections over it. So if that sort of natural document data overflows 1 megabyte, you have an area to do. But for that really large binary object, if you're talking like images, sound files, videos, that's really something you want to look to cloud storage or cloud storage for Firebase to handle that sort of stuff.
So definitely a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, and cloud functions can help really tie that together as well. Cloud storage for Firebase has a similar trigger system. So a really cool thing you can do is when someone, say, uploads a file, you can have that trigger cloud function that maybe does the Vision API to classify it and work out what type of items are in that image, and then update the Cloud Firestore database that then gets pushed out to customers and say, there's a new corgi picture available, and give you a direct link to it. So you can really hang these things together using the Cloud Function integration.
And I think that's something that people will be really excited about, the integration and interoperability between Firebase and Firestore, as well as GCP, and how all these tools come together to make a really robust tool set for your application needs.
Yeah, I think having that tool set available that allows you to do anything, and if you want to fan out into more complex applications, you really don't need to retool on everything, because you can just sort of extend the integration out.
Cool. Well, it looks like we answered every question in the chat. I mean, Vivian, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, is there anything that you'd like to end with? Any really cool projects that you've seen, or things that you want to see in the future, or any releases that you see on the roadmap that would definitely be helpful for any of our viewers? Someone.
I try to be careful about roadmap just because things change around. There's definitely some cool stuff coming down the pipeline. I really hope I can talk about it soon. Mm-hmm. I'm really encouraged by the quality of the questions that we're getting on Stack Overflow and places like our Google Groups, where we can have discussions as well. So if you're using it, engage. We've got a lot of the engineering and the product management team that are out there happy to answer your questions. And we love seeing what people are building. So tweet at us, send emails into the group to do show and tell. Like, really show us what you're building with this, because I think at the end of the day, that's why we build this stuff. It's so that you can go out and build stuff, and getting to see that at the end of the day is a really nice bonus.
Yeah, it's really awesome to see kind of the fruits of the labor of you put in, and you get to see cool demos like the corgi demo.
For sure. I want to go back and play now.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool. I mean, it's amazing how you can do everything so easily now. I mean, just like 10 years ago, that would have taken probably a couple months just to get all the infrastructure up. But now, I mean, you could build that probably in a day, right? You get the right people in the room. So no, I mean, thank you, Dan, for going over the Firestore. That was great. And thank you for everyone who joined online. Anything else, Vivian?
That's it. Definitely appreciate you guys joining us this afternoon. Want to see what you're building. So as Dan mentioned, tweet at us. Let us know what you're working on. If you have any questions or stumble upon anything that's stopping your progress, let us know. We're always on Stack Overflow or any of the available channels. You'll be able to get in touch with us directly, which I think is something incredible, and it speaks volumes about our support and how dedicated we are to our developers. So looking forward to hearing from you guys more, and we're here every week. So.
Yep, and hit subscribe if you like it. Dan, I'll give you one last time. You want to say anything?
Nope, sorry, you got me stumped there.
Put you on the spot. Put you on the spot. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Tune in next week. I think we might be talking Kubernetes and Stackdriver or serverless. Something really cool next week. That's all I know.
Stay tuned for something really awesome next week. We're looking forward to seeing you then.
Yes.
In the meantime.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.